EA is now on Twitch. Join us Wednesday nights when Alistair reads a bedtime story, and Sunday mornings for a few hours of chill casual gaming, plus interviews, special guests, pickup streams, and more. Visit twitch.tv/EA Podcasts and follow us to be notified when we go live, plus access VODs of past broadcasts.
Warning. The following story contains minor descriptions of sex and has an allusion to sexual assault.
Escape Pod, Episode 787. Ascent, Exalt, Love, Propagate, Rise. By Sarah Kumari.
Hi there, welcome to Escape Pod. I'm your host and co-editor, Mur Lafferty. Today we bring you Ascend, Exalt, Love, Propagate, Rise by Sarah Kumari. Sarah Kumari is a former scientist who now organizes conferences and recruits PhD students at a research institution. She lives in Surrey, England, engaging in lightsaber battles and time travel debates with her two boys. Sarah writes speculative and YA fiction in the snatches of time between adulty stuff. She is ecstatic to be sharing oxygen with the authors in the Escape Pod and hopes her other weird stories and novels will find homes one day. You can find her on Twitter at Sarah with an H _K_J. It's narrated for us by Hollis Monroe. Hollis Monroe is an award-winning radio producer, opera and jazz singer, and Shakespearean. He served as executive producer and also read for Iowa Public Radio's The Book Club for many years, and is an active voice actor, MC, and singer. This is an Escape Pod original and Sarah Kumari's first sale. So make sure all your plants are watered and getting enough light, because it's story time.
Ascend, Exalt, Love, Propagate, Rise by Sarah Kumari, narrated by Hollis Monroe. The glory smolders through Jean's bloodstream, pulsing its encouragement. The rivals who have survived along with him, officially fellow eminents now that selection is over, twitch and moan as their addiction is quenched. Within minutes, they are preening, flexing their muscles, stomping, or singing to Mother Elithra. Jean's training allows him to douse the call, to batter it down with a deliberate shifting of delta waves. He visualizes his metabolism disassembling the compound at industrial speed. This works for the moment. In the crowd that fills the Everreach Company spaceship Indreen, the rebel woman pretending to be Jean's mother clutches the hand of the girl playing his sister. They are mixed in with the family and friends of the other eminents, along with villagers and unrelated fervents that have made the pilgrimage. The crowd prays collectively, feverish in their good fortune, for the Everreach Company will reward the kin of eminence for 2 generations. If Jean succeeds in his true mission, his family will be slaughtered. Indreen narrows her eyes at him. Jean, realizing he is static, feels a spark of panic. Glancing at the company guards, he starts to sing, but his voice is too loud, eyes too hard. He softens himself, puts on a show of caressing his arms and flexing. As his muscles pump, bloodstream quickening, he feels the pulse of glory trying to flow again. Though his body works to burn it, the company dose is purer and more clever than any the rebel chemists could make. Glory's effect is designed to increase gradually over these long hours, ascending as the eminents do. The prayers of the crowd peal and throb around the hangar, dropping to a hush when the shutters at the viewpoint glide open. Jehan falls to his knees. This reaction is not faked. In all her wonder, Mother Elethra, our beloved patron, the phloem of invention, oil-bringer, loving devourer, our great vine. Seen from the approach, Elethra has engulfed 2/3 of her host moon, Siona. Her roots, as thick as transport runs, coil and writhe into Siona's seas. These, perpetually filled as torrents flow down the mother's west flank back into them. Siona's forests, which once supported Elethra as a sapling, have been smothered. Now she supports herself, vines roping up over themselves into the atmosphere. At her epicenter, they build into a peak, a ruined, melting fairy tale castle, a slow, flowing mountain. One vibrant tendril curls up from the middle, giant leaves, jagged and poison-tipped. Her fleshy, purplish-green flowers are bristling and barbed. There are 8, fewer than ever before. Jehan's bloom is the 4th highest. During the selection trials, he was careful to qualify as eminent, but not highly ranked. No point being mostly dead, mostly mad with glory, when he gets there. The priest works on the eminence now, stripping and purifying them. Chanting through the anointments bright, oils and resins stinking of plant hormones. She paints their organs, lurid daubs that make caricatures of their sexes. These fluids are all they will wear to their deaths. Naked power, raw glory. Jehan can't wait now. Even his skin is excited. He jitters, babbling prayers with the other eminence as a transport takes them down to Siona's surface. By the time they arrive at Mother Elethra's base, everything shimmers through Jehan's rosy drug haze. Despite this, the mother looks unhealthy, pitted and scaled, oozing, rotting, and patched with dark fungi. The priest gives a fevered cry, and the climb starts. Eminence scrambling up, frenetic with lust. Jehan, bred for agility, feels himself at the apex of his life, all moments working for this. Mites the size of his forearm, glassy-shelled and impenetrable, skitter up Mother's stalks, and sometimes over his body, with ratchety, hooked limbs. He flails and tries to kick them away, but his bare feet glance off them, their slick exoskeletons bone-hard. But the mites do not notice him, and he realizes someone in the deepest throes of the glory should not notice them. Jehan curbs his reaction and instead pays attention to their steps, watching as they weave. He follows the insects as they navigate past nodules oozing milky glue, rotting footholds, and around hairs the size of human limbs, razor-tipped and dripping acid. He climbs on. The sky is dark now. Ambient light from Siona's sister moon provides the only brightness. But at least he's at the base of the fresh shoot. Here the mites cluster under leaves. The machinations of their insides grind and hum as they peel off reams of glossy torpedo-shaped eggs from their undersides. I might live off them, Jehan thinks, if I weren't going to die tomorrow. He climbs on, up into the thinning atmosphere. It's harder. The stalk, almost vertical now, is smooth and green. Hairs are finer, splintering if he tries them as footholds. Will the other eminence rest? His metabolism does its job, crushing down the glory in its continual release, but he needs a little more to get up, to ignore the pain. Eventually, Jehan loops his burning arms through a fresh tendril, lays against the stalk for a minute, and shuts his eyes. The buzzing of an ever-reach drone wakes him, its beam flashing across his face. Jehan curses. If they suspect him for a minute, they'll cast him off the vine. The risk of losing even a single flower would be extreme for the company. 1/8 of the system's everfuel depends on its pollination, and Mother Elytra is the only of her kind. The company has never let another vine grow, all suitable habitats being outside their political control. Jehan puts a placid look on his face, makes a long show of grinding his hips up against the stalk, then roaring and flexing before he climbs on. His route takes him past the first flower. This is closed now, for the eminent inside has already pollinated. The wails Jehan hears from inside are not the pleasure-soaked cries befitting the orgiastic, beautiful deaths they were promised. Eminent number 1 makes the sound of a mouse pinned by a cat, being flayed slowly. Mites are clumped around the flower stem, not feeding on sap, but chittering, as if in anticipation. Jehan works against the clenching of his jaw. Everreach has kept so much knowledge for themselves. He wishes he had a way to telegraph it to headquarters. He puts a look on his face that he hopes resembles blissful. The rustle and creak of the great vine and the chorus of the mites do not quite hide the thin wail of drone motors as they monitor the eminent's progress. He climbs harder. His flower has moved, its heavy head hanging down and turned in towards its stem, as if to reject his advance. Her fleshy outer petals are deep green, but veined and flushed with purple. 2 Everreach drones hover now as he uses the last of his strength to climb up over the bloom. Her sepals are glossy with a wax that rejects his grip. Arms juddering, he lowers himself down and curls his legs up to enter the flower. As he moves, he makes the right faces for those watching, but is unable to conceal his lack of erection. Quickly he finds the tricipital bud and pumps it with his hand, stimulating the flower to close before the company machines can reach him. The glory renews itself in his blood. The Everreach chemists have crafted the dose so beautifully, timed it to perfection. Jehan shuts his eyes and lets it roll over him. The inching movements of the petals enclosing him become a dance, sensual and delicious. Exalt, love, propagate. He is hers, Mother Elytra, loving devourer. He has never been so happy. The scent released as the flower closes is a heavy fog. Roses, tomatoes, and something meatier. As it thickens, Jehan is pulled back into full consciousness, his brain taking him to the training camp where his teachers stand over him, dispensing electric shocks and cold water. The memory is infused with this rich scent, or something that is close enough. He's awake, and he's here, and he needs to act before he's castrated, flayed, or digested by this bloom. He remembers what he needs to do, but instead he lies in the almost dark and listens to the quiet, cushioned swill of the flower's vasculature. He listens and listens and feels the glory drain away, his limbs shuddering for hours as it leaves him. There's a weight swinging behind his eyes. Pendulous exhaustion. Will he know? Will he still be alive when they've all been pollinated? That will be his time to act, the great vine having diverted all her energy to digestion, to producing the rich, oily seeds that fuel a solar system. She'll be weakest then. The innermost petals of his flower flinch, dangerously fast, as if sensing his thoughts. Everreach has scientifically dismissed the legends professing Mother Elytra's sentience. Classic anthropomorphism, wishful thinking. They say her movements and electrical transmissions are hormonal and reflexive, like any other plant. A creak alerts Jian to the nectary at the center of the flower, surrounded by needle-like fibers. As he watches, it develops a series of radial fissures, emitting liquid, clear and viscous, but enough like water that he lunges for it. He pushes his face down to taste carefully, then scoops it up, drinking handful after handful of the sweet, quenching nectar. He blushes then, being fed by this bloom he was supposed to copulate with. The Everreach selection tests and every training drill he's had for the past 6 months have tried to imprint the need to procreate here, but this is what his rebel upbringing was designed to combat. He realizes the company never fully explained how to pollinate, only that it would be reflexive, that the eminence would need no sustenance. Elithra's nectar has dried, they said. This was how her natural pollinators had gone extinct. Jian is full now, but still the nectar comes. He finds he can't stop drinking, compelled to take more, until he passes out, belly bloated, sugars fast in his bloodstream. He dreams he is inside a flower, not the vegetal purple of his bloom, but somewhere soft and pink, like the roses on his home planet. Every inhalation is sweet and gentle. The bloom holds him in tender petals that sway in the breeze. She talks to him, thanking him for not forcing himself upon her. She cries, weeping that she is made to flower, to bear seed, when already she has given the Everreach seed enough to sow the galaxy. Jane takes a sip from an iced glass of pink lemonade, a drink he has heard of but never tasted. He thinks about how to tell her that her seeds are crushed for their unique and fiery oils, that she has seeded no sisters or daughters. Instead, he cries with her, sings to her, songs of freedom and weightlessness. Jian wakes. The petals of his bloom pulse and tremble around him, velvet, rose pink, and fleshy, visceral purple all at once. If he concentrates, it's the purple he sees. This is the bloom that will kill him, he thinks. See it properly. Do your work. He waits for some energy, feeling the gentle throb of the pulsing petals against his back. A lacework of vasculature filling with fluid and releasing. Microns and siphons and pistons. He feels these minute movements against his skin where they are detected by a dance of ions, then propelled in synchronized cascades through his neurons. He feels her cadences and realizes that he and Elithra, their biology so different, are a reciprocal symphony of delta waves, hormones, and pheromones. She knows. She's telling him she is ready. He bites into his cheek, mouth filling with iron and salt, savory and delicious after those hours of consuming only sugars. Jian chokes as he pushes his fingers in the rip inside his cheek, feeling around for what's hidden in there. When he finds it, Elithra is ready, her stigma open, a black maw. He pushes the spore, marble-sized, deep into it. The flower trembles. It might hurt, he thinks to her. The fungus will consume all of you. The company that tends you will collapse. He doesn't tell her about the society it controls, how it will dissolve, cause a revolution. I'm ready, she pulses. I've wanted this for a millennia. They've pushed for more and more. You're the last, he thinks to her. The only. There's a seed, she pulses, wrapped in my roots, deep in the ocean. If it grows, sow half of my fruit. Use the others. Build a better company. Genes are activated in the spore the rebels have designed. Jian stays inside and prays, giving thanks for his renewed life and this last gift that is more than he and his people dared hope. He sings to her of a peace made of freedom and weightlessness, and waits for his moment to descend.
And that was our story. The author has this to say. This started as a sci-fi fairy tale retelling and ended up far darker than I expected. It takes a look at political and industrial exploitation of the environment for short-term profit, expectations of societal and gender norms, and that feeling that we can never give enough. The story contains a literal seed of hope at the end, which I hope sweetens the pill. I like what she says at the end because over the years, it's been kind of hard to define what we want for stories when we say, have fun. Some people think that implies we want only comedy, only lighthearted. But that's not exactly right, because we do post some serious, some darker stories. Divvy and I realized that people think all sorts of things are fun, and they may disagree. Some people will play computer games for hours and call that fun. Other people will run in 100-mile races across the desert and call that fun. Some fun leaves you happy, some leaves you exhausted, maybe even in pain. But ultimately, if you've done something fun, then you should come away with it with a feeling of satisfaction. This is a dark, deeply weird tale of upsetting the status quo. And every time deeply weird was used in a comment about the story was all a compliment. At the end, we are only promised more problems and unrest due to the changes our protagonist has made. And yet, we feel satisfied as readers because the implication is, after the revolution, things will ultimately be better. Are we promised that? Not at all. That's the bad thing about short stories. Sometimes you're left with, but what happens then? But that's also the wonderful thing about short stories, because if a story lives on in your head after you read it, then it has done its job. It's hard to ask for donations now, because if you are somebody who has suffered job loss, illness, family issues, anything over the past year and a half, we want you to take the best care of yourself that you can. But we're very proud of the fact that we, A, bring free fiction to people who might need some escapism every week, and B, we pay everybody involved in bringing that fiction to you. So if you're not one of the people who has suffered greatly in the past year and a half, consider supporting escape artists. All 4 of our podcasts get support from your dollars. Go to patreon.com/EApodcasts, or you can support us directly at the site escapepod.org. EscapePod is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated, and it's published under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives License. All other rights are reserved by our authors. Our music is by permission of Daikaiju, and you can find out more about them at daikaiju.org. That was our show for this week. Our quote comes from Frederick Douglass. Inaction is followed by stagnation, stagnation is followed by pestilence, and pestilence is followed by death. We'll see you next week. Get your vaccine if you can. Keep washing your hands. We'll get back to our humble gardening way of life soon. And have some fun.